We have an annual revenue of $150 billion as the enterprise. And then for the online org that I'm working with, we just surpassed $25 billion.
Welcome to the Experimentation Edge, where product managers, data scientists, and engineers talk about how they make smarter decisions. I'm Ashley Stirrup, the Chief Marketing Officer for Growthbook. And in each episode, I'll sit down with an executive to unpack how they use experimentation and A/B testing to make better decisions. This show is sponsored by Growthbook, the open source experimentation platform leader. Now let's jump in and get started with our next guest. Welcome to today's episode. I'm excited to have Kim Li, Senior Manager of Online Experimentation at Home Depot with us. Welcome, Kim.
Hey, Ashley. Thank you for having me.
So Kim, you bring a very interesting background. You started your career as a neuroscience researcher. Could you tell us a little bit about your career and kind of journey to Home Depot?
Yeah. So my background was in neuroscience and statistics. So I started off as a neuroscience researcher running clinical trials and doing experiments on human subjects. And then I decided to pursue my career as a data professional in the industry. So switch gear into the industry, did a bunch of years of consulting work until I landed at the Home Depot. I've been at Home Depot for over 4 years at this point. Now I'm leading the online experimentation team for online. Yeah,
And that's a pretty big business, right?
it is. Many people didn't know about this, but Home Depot we have an annual revenue of $150 billion as the enterprise. And then for the online org that I'm working with, we just surpassed $25 billion.
Yeah, those are both pretty massive numbers. Of course, Home Depot's a big business, but you don't realize just how big it is. So that's pretty interesting. I'm sure that makes experimentation that much more important there.
Very fertile ground for experimentation because we're serving millions of customers across the United States and online as well. Yeah, it's just very good ground for doing large scale experimentation.
Yeah, I've been a very heavy shopper, both online and in store, and used your app a lot. Yeah, I think you've done a lot of great things there.
Glad to hear that.
Could you tell us a little bit about experimentation model at Home Depot? Like how much of it is centralized versus decentralized?
Yeah, so for us, it's very centralized model. Basically, any major changes you want to go to the website, depot.com, whether it being a content swap or a feature update or a model change in search or recommendation algorithm, it will be tested by my team.
Got it. And how many different product teams are there at Home Depot? I'd imagine there's a lot.
Yeah, that is a pretty broad. We serve probably 40, 50 different balanced teams, not only product, but we also have customers from data science, UX. If you have an idea, we will support you to test it.
Got it. Got it. That's great. And how many experiments are you running per year?
We're in the low hundreds right now.
That's great. And how do you see the program evolving over time?
Yeah, we're really pushing for this experimentation practice to be drastically scaled up this year, next year. I think the leadership's really looking forward to us really expand.
Got it. And you've got a pretty big team working on all this, right?
Yeah, so I have 10 associates that are doing the analytics, setting up experimentation, making sure it's got the proper hypothesis, doing proper analysis on it. And then we also have a sizable developer team and also automation because we're churning out all these reports for different experiments and a lot of it has to be automated. So we're not draining on everybody's hour to do this one by one. So yeah, overall, probably about 40 people on the team.
Yeah. And then with all those different product teams, I would imagine that it's quite a challenge just identifying good learnings, figuring out how to share those across teams, getting visibility with leadership. How does that all work there?
Each of my analysts has a very specialized area. They get to really learn the business, whether it being top of the funnel, search function, data science function, or bottom of the funnel differences. So they will focus deeply into that. And for every test, they work closely with the product managers to understand what they need to get out of the test. We help them to set proper hypothesis, make sure we're evaluating it properly. And then they would all have this At the end of the test, we'll have a readout session with all the stakeholders. Because sometimes you also have other parties involved. Potentially marketing has interest in this feature or Baxters have a particular say. So they will all be invited to this public readout for about 30 minutes. And then at the end of it, we all align on our understanding. We'll send out a blast email with the final results to share with across the stakeholders. But also those results are all stored in a centralized place. So anybody can go back into tests that has ran maybe in 2020 to get the learnings and see if in the past something has done already.
And do you get much visibility with the executive team there?
Yes. And that's simply because all the executives, leaders love to learn about the test. They really truly understand A/B testing is the golden rule to understand incrementality, the real impact. So a lot of support, but also a lot of visibility and comes with it the responsibility to do good analytics. But also, yeah, like these leaders will jump into these review sessions with you and ask questions directly. They would check the library, sometimes paying our associates directly to ask about a specific test.
Oh, that's great. It sounds like it's a relatively humble culture where people are open to being wrong and wanting to learn and things like that. Is that safe to say?
We definitely try very hard to do that. We really cultivate this culture of test and learn. We test because we don't know for sure. If you know for sure, and I sometimes ask my stakeholder this question, are you going to do something differently if the test result come out bad? If you're not,
Mm-hmm.
then let's not waste time, right? So I
Yeah,
think it's really just a collaborative effort to try to get to that. What's the best for our customer and customer experience?
got it. And one thing I think that's interesting about Home Depot, just thinking about it as a customer, is you must have very different personas that you're trying to create a great experience for. For example, the contractor versus the DIY person, maybe somebody who's focusing on bathroom versus building a new fence or whatever it might be, right? Like very different kinds of projects and skill sets and all that. Like, how do you think about that when it comes to creating great online experiences?
That is a great point because we do serve both the DIYers and the pros, and they
Mm-hmm.
shop very differently. If you're a DIYer, you might be deciding on what lights I want to use, so on and so forth. But for pros, they're very goal oriented, project oriented. So we do have a pro website as well. So depending on the feature, they could be tested separately as different audiences.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting though, because Home Depot has such an advantage because you've got so many stores and the inventory at those stores is really different. I know from my own personal shopping. Oh, if I'm willing to drive another 20 minutes, they've got three other kinds of wood than the type of wood I was looking for, something like that. So, in general, how do you help your teams learn from losing experiments, particularly if you've already got some conviction that, okay, this is an area that should be a winner, it was a loser, but like, how do we iterate on it? How do we learn from it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think for learning, really important thing is why this happened. And of course, the test could be set up wrong or something like that. This is the first thing to check, right? Do we have tagging in place to measure what we want to measure all the way to when the result actually came out? So if everything else checks out, now it's really deep dive into the customer journey. Where did people fall? Where did this gap start to widen? And when we narrow it down to the why, then we really get to how do we improve it. So that's always the most important part when a solid test was wrong. How do we get to why and what's the next step?
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. How does Home Depot think about kind of North Star metrics and guardrails and all that? Is it pretty consistent from experiment to experiment, or does it vary a lot?
It varied quite a bit, especially as the centralized team which serves so many different verticals. A test who's trying to drive maybe add to cart, that will be their metric. If it's something like a banner that's supposed to attract more visitors, that could be the impression or click through. So it really depends on which team is doing it and what is the goal of that test.
And do you track like total ROI from experimentation and like losses avoided and things like that?
Yes, we do consider that as part of our team's KPI as well to say how much learning did we help, how much dollar we have helped save.
And I know you mentioned earlier that you definitely want to ramp up the number of experiments you're running, but how do you think about that? Is AI a big factor? Is enabling more self-service a big factor?
I think AI is very helpful in terms of the development speed, right? The IT orgs definitely going through a lot of evolution in how they code and how fast they can get the product features ready. So that would ultimately speed up this team as well. But also in insights generation, for example, or learn play a role there as well. But I think for us, it's a lot about unlocking capabilities. So right now we're still very much client-side testing, and we are developing server-side testing capabilities. So everything moves faster, the end-to-end. Once you do have a learning that say this is a winner, you should be able to release it very quickly, things like that. All of this would ultimately contribute to the better testing experience, but also faster and more numbers.
Terrific. You covered a lot of ground very quickly. This was a great episode. I feel like we got a great window into experimentation at Home Depot. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation, please support our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing. Better yet, share the episode with a friend. I'm Ashley Stirrup with Growth Book. We'll see you next time on the Experimentation Edge.